Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So, let's begin. My name is Colin, and here's a question that took years off my life to answer. How long can a person swallow disrespect in a relationship before finally walking away? How many slights get waved off? How many feelings get buried just to keep the peace? How many times do you tell yourself it isn't that deep? Because for me, what happened at her birthday party was the last line. It pushed me past the point of return. I'm going to tell it exactly as it unfolded from where I stood, so hold your conclusions until the end. The truth is, this wasn't a snap decision. It didn't come out of nowhere. This ending was layered from years of tiny moments, spoken and unspoken, things I ignored and things I tried to repair. But that night snapped something clean. And once it snapped, there wasn't a way back that didn't cost me myself. Every tragic love story starts with a beautiful beginning, and ours was no exception. The first time I met my wife, Renee, it felt like time hiccuped. She was beautiful, yes, but there was a calm assurance in how she carried herself that drew the eye without trying. It wasn't just the surface either. She was bright, quick, and could carry a conversation with ease. And before long, I wanted more of her time, like it was air. When we started talking, something simply locked into place. Back then, no one could have convinced me she wasn't the person meant for me. We moved quickly, and it felt right. I was convinced we were a perfect match. If anyone had tried to say otherwise, I would have told them they didn't know what they were looking at. So, naturally, I proposed. She said yes, and it felt like life had just handed me everything I thought I'd ever wanted. Then we got married and moved in together, and small shifts crept in. Little habits that never showed while we were dating edged into the frame. I chalked it up to the adjustment period. Everyone has flaws, and I loved her. So I gave grace the way I'd hoped someone would give it to me. What I didn't understand then was that these weren't random quirks. They were signposts pointing at deeper things I'd missed while we were riding the high of love and newness. Soon enough, those minor flaws got sharper. I've always pictured myself with a small family, 1 or 2 kids running through the house. It's what I grew up believing rounded a life out. Not having children wasn't something I even considered a possibility. So, when I married Renee, I assumed we were aligned. We never had the hard conversation, and that was the first big mistake on me. I assumed marriage meant shared goals, build a life, raise a family. There were no signals from her that she felt otherwise. She never once mentioned not wanting kids while we were dating. I thought it was understood. After we settled into married life, real life quieted the noise, and one evening she told me she wasn't thinking about kids anytime soon. She said she wasn't in a hurry and wanted to focus on other things. It blindsided me. I didn't argue. I told myself time changes hearts, and that as the years moved, the clock inside her would tick and the desire would show up on its own. I didn't want to pressure her. I called it patience. Deep down, I knew I was ignoring a red flag. I just didn't want to look. There was another pattern that became clearer the longer we were married. When Renee wanted something, it was non-negotiable. Conversation wasn't conversation. It was a rail we stood on while her train sped through. Compromise didn't enter the room. During our dating years, doing anything to make her happy felt natural to me. I went out of my way to make her feel seen. But as we settled, I learned her need for control wasn't small. It touched everything. The more she got her way, the more my needs seemed to vanish off the map. Worse, there was a tone running underneath a quiet superiority, like she saw herself as a tier above me inside our marriage. Little comments carried a condescension that wore me down in increments. When she did bend on something, she'd frame it as settling, not compromising. That word landed like a punch every time. It translated as, being with me was doing me a favor. I felt tolerated, not chosen. Eventually, it felt like she held all the cards, and I was forever trying to catch up. Even though I worked hard to keep our home balanced while holding down my full-time job, I could feel a growing sense that she considered herself the superior partner. She worked, too, but I covered most of the household expenses. The more I did, the less respected I felt. It was like no contribution from me ever qualified for credit. She acted as if I owed her something for the simple fact of being in this marriage. She didn't say it outright. The posture, the quips, and the constant centering of her wants drew the picture for her. I tried to talk about it. I thought if I laid out what I was feeling and explained how the behavior landed, we could adjust. But whenever I brought it up, it was like I'd switched to another language. She'd brush it off. "You're just stirring up problems where there aren't any." The more I tried to communicate, the faster she shut the door. A gap opened. She didn't try to close it. I retreated. The office held me longer. The study stayed lit. Home felt like a place we coexisted in as roommates who shared walls, not lives. We barely spoke beyond surface updates. For months, that was reality. Two strangers under one roof. The only time we put on us was in public events with friends, rooms where performance worked. We played the parts, the happy pair, the inside jokes, the easy touches, and then, keys in the lock at home, we split back into separate lanes, parallel lives passing in the hallway. Her 30th birthday approached, and I saw a chance to reach across the distance. I was tired of the quiet that had stretched across months. A birthday felt like a doorway. If I made the night feel like a hand extended, maybe she'd take it. I didn't know the exact playbook, only that I wanted to get it right. One evening, Renee came into the living room with a suggestion. "I'm thinking I'll throw a small party for my 30th, she said, casual. There it was. My opening. I told her I'd handle everything. "Let me take care of the party arrangements. You don't have to worry about a thing." The relief that crossed her face was immediate. She smiled, kissed me, and the gratitude looked real. I got to work. I hired an event planner to tighten the vision. Perfection was the bar. I wanted 0 complaints, no misses to point at. We laid out every detail: decor, the menu, the flow, exactly what Renee liked. I went all in: extra flowers, custom invitations, music and lighting that set a mood. I didn't hold back. When the day arrived, the house looked incredible. Everything landed where it should. I felt a small pride as I stood back and took in the room. Guests rolled in: friends, co-workers, and a handful of faces I wasn't sure she truly cared about. Didn't matter. Renee was the star, as always, glowing, laughing, floating through the crowd like she owned the air. She looked more beautiful than I'd ever seen her. I kept thinking about the quiet we'd have after just us. I had a gift set aside, something straight from my chest, and I hoped that with the right words, maybe we'd finally talk for real. As the night beat on, conversations layered and laughter stitched the room together. Then the moment came. Renee stood to give her birthday speech. It started like any other thanks to everyone for coming. Gratitude for the love and support of the people in her life. Reflections on hitting 30 and how different things felt from younger expectations, and how everything had worked out so perfectly. Then she smiled, looked over her people, and added, "Yeah, everything's been perfect. Aside, I guess I kind of settled for Colin." Laughter hit the room like a spark. It rolled. People took it as cheeky, light, cute. I didn't laugh. I couldn't. The second the words left her mouth, the floor wobbled under me. I'd heard that "settled for me" line before in smaller moments, tossed like a match in little arguments. But this time it was public. That phrase had been a wound for months, maybe longer, and she ripped the stitches with a crowd watching. It felt like she'd just told the room I was the consolation prize, the runner-up in her own life story. The laughter around her made it worse. The room colluded with the punchline. After the speech, she slid back into the mingling like nothing sharp had passed her lips. I couldn't keep pretending. I wasn't going to let myself be degraded again, not in front of friends, not in front of anyone. Without a word to anyone, I turned and walked out. Upstairs, I packed what I needed. I didn't look back. All I knew was that I couldn't stay in a house. Couldn't stay in a life with someone who thought that little of me. Hours moved. The party pulsed downstairs. My phone buzzed. It was her. Frustration rose up, but I breathed before I looked. The message was short. "Where are you?" I didn't respond. Anything I said right then would have only lit it further. Then the call came, her name on the screen. I let it ring 5 times, then answered. The urgency and how the call came through told me she wanted me to pick up. Before she could speak, I cut in. "I'm tired of your humiliation, Renee. Tonight was the last straw." Silence, shock, or confusion, I couldn't tell. Then, in her usual way, she acted like she didn't understand. She tried to shrink it. The whole thing was a misunderstanding, just a harmless joke. "You're throwing a tantrum over something so little." A tantrum? That single word landed like a slap. The truth sat down in front of me and refused to move. She had never respected me enough to meet my feelings where they lived. As long as the world stayed aligned with what she wanted, nothing else registered. I didn't let her finish. I ended the call. She called again. Again. I didn't pick up. I wasn't going to get dragged into a loop that would leave me emptier. Then a new message. It was just a harmless joke. I didn't mean to offend you. I stared at the text, and it meant nothing. Words can be polished. Meanings can't. She'd crossed a line and called it comedy. This time, there wasn't a road back I could recognize. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. She had shown me how she saw me. I wasn't going to pretend not to see it. Weeks passed. Messages and calls kept coming. Begging, bargaining, backspins. None of it moved me. I couldn't keep pretending. I went to a divorce lawyer and started the process because, bottom line, I was the one losing ground here. He served her the papers. I felt relief like oxygen. 2 days later, I went back to the house to collect the rest of my things. She found me. Tears moving fast, voice soft, asking me to remember our vows, to think about what we'd shared. She could cry all afternoon. It didn't change what was true. "That doesn't concern me anymore," I said. The vows she wanted me to recall had already been broken. By her, and by me in the places where I let myself disappear. Looking back now, some lessons are louder than the rest. These are the ones I wish I'd had in my pocket sooner. Never assume shared values without having real conversations before marriage. I assumed we were aligned on children because we were aligned on marriage. I never sat down and asked the slow, deep questions about the future. You can't assume someone shares a goal just because you share a bed or a ring. Ask clearly. Listen honestly. Decide with both eyes open. If someone repeatedly jokes at your expense, believe them. That's how they see you. Renee's I-settled lines weren't playful. They were a window. When a person keeps placing you below them in small, public ways, don't edit it into banter. It's a worldview. If you let it slide, the slope only steepens. Silence isn't always peace. Sometimes it's slow destruction. I mistook quiet for calm. No yelling doesn't mean no damage. Our silence wasn't healing. It was distance hardening. We stopped talking. We stopped sharing. The longer I let it stay quiet, the more everything we needed to save burned down in slow motion. Don't confuse lack of conflict for health. When someone consistently dismisses your feelings, they're telling you your price tag to them. When I finally stood up, she called it a tantrum, downplayed everything, minimized the wound. If someone won't even try to understand why you're hurt, they're showing you what you're worth to them. And if you stick around, you're agreeing with their math. Now it's your turn. Was I wrong to walk out that night? Did I miss something obvious? Or did I take the only honest way out? If this were your life, how would you have handled it? Drop a comment and tell me what you see. And if any of this sounds like someone you know, share it with them. Thanks for staying through the end.